Well, Mr. Nettles, why don't you begin by talking about your background in Alabama and where you went to school and things like that?
Okay. I was born in southwest Alabama, which is approximately at a little community called Arlington. Had a couple of stores and a post office. Arlington's about 100 miles north of Mobile and approximately 50 miles south of Selma on a straight line. I attended Pine Hill School, or Pine Hill High School. I'm the oldest of 7 kids, and 5 boys and 2 girls. We had a big family, Mom and Dad. We would live there all our lives, that kind of thing. And
Did you grow up on a farm? Or?
well, it wasn't a farm. My daddy was not a farmer. Now, we had gardens and all. He did several things, had a mercantile store. He bought and sold cattle some, that kind of thing. He ended up with a rural postal route his last many years and whatever. But
well, he knew everybody if he had a postal route.
Oh, yes, he did. And I used to ride that with him and got to know all the people, yeah. But,
now, tell me about the college that you went to because it's had a name change.
Livingston State Teachers College was when I went there in 55, graduated from high school in 55, went there in the fall, and it eventually changed to Livingston University, and now it is now the University of West Alabama. I guess they became university status, but when we were there, it was Livingston State Teachers College. I went there primarily because Gail, my wife, wanted to go there, and I wanted to go there, and I tried out for football and made the team and earned a scholarship and played football, basketball, and baseball, which were the only sports they had at that time. All
now
through
you
there.
said Gail was your wife. Well, she was your wife at that time?
No, so she was my girlfriend at that time, yeah. I guess we could say fiance because we knew that time when we finished college we were going to marry, so yeah, I guess my fiance. But I met her in the 5th grade when her daddy, Joe Hayes, came as our principal, and we were boy and girlfriends from 5th grade on through right today. And
girlfriend of the daughter of the principal.
That's right, yeah, and that didn't keep me from getting my share of whippings from him either.
Really?
It sure didn't, yeah.
Well, that was the old days, I guess.
Yeah, old days, good old days. Yeah. I kind of sometimes wish it's that way now, but that's not going to happen.
No, I don't think so nowadays. I remember one of our coaches, one of the football coaches, had a big paddle in high school with a hole in it. And,
we did.
And he maintained discipline.
My high school coach, we had just one coach, and he never got a chance to paddle me. And I remember the night of graduation, I reminded him, Coach, you never got a chance to paddle me, and I'm glad of it. But whatever.
Did you know all along that you wanted to teach school?
I think so. I knew I wanted to coach because
okay.
I was an athlete. In fact, in my entire family were athletes. I knew I wanted to be a coach, therefore I needed to teach. And I've always liked math in school, and I thought, well, if I can do something from a college standpoint, major in math or minor in math, teaching, it might help me get a job. And it helped me get my very first job at North Cobb High School. They wanted a math teacher and an assistant coach, so with everything being, I was my fiance and all that was here, so I took off to come to Ackworth in 59.
Well, that sounds great. By the way, what did you play in football?
I was a quarterback. Back in those days, we had to play both ways. So I was a quarterback and defensive end for the most part. Mostly just offensive quarterback. That kind of thing. But
well, I didn't think you looked big enough to be a lineman. Or
no.
Like that.
Well, back then, there weren't many big linemen like you see today.
Well, it made a difference when they had to play both ways.
That's right, yes, yeah.
I remember growing up at University of Tennessee, they have starting guards that weighed 202 pounds and what have you.
Well, a little quick story. My brother right under me played at Alabama, and he weighed 220 pounds, and he was on what they call a fat man squad. He had to run extra and eat lettuce for supper at 220 pounds. So,
Well, it's a different day.
It's definitely a different day.
I think maybe, well, sometimes I think maybe football would be better off if they had to play both ways.
Well, some of today's teams, particularly in high school, do play. The better athletes play both ways. And
okay, so you came to North Cobb, and let's see now. At this time, your, I guess, father-in-law, by the time you got here, was principal at the Ackworth School.
Ackworth Elementary.
Talk about that. I want to talk about him.
Well, Mr. Hayes came, as I said earlier, came when we were in the 5th grade. His daughter and I were in the 5th grade. He was my principal all through high school. I don't know how to describe him. He was a student person. He was very friendly, very student-oriented, that kind of thing, meaning there were times like he would come to our house after school and get us, and we'd either go fishing or go hunting. He'd provide the gun, the boat, the fishing stuff, the shells. He was that kind of person. Now, this was a small school. We only had probably 250 kids in all 1 through 12. There was no kindergarten back then. But, yeah, he was really a good fella and a good principal.
Okay, so you taught math at
I taught math.
North Cobb?
Taught math, taught 5 classes of math in '59. And the interesting part of that is today's times, I can recall I was paid $3,400 a year to teach, and I got $200 coaching supplement for the purpose of helping coach the B team football with Coach Matthews and Coach Sewell. And then I helped with the B team boys and girls basketball with Coach Roger Russell. And got $200 supplements for $3,600 a year. But that was okay. That was one of the reasons I came over here. Georgia paid a little more than Alabama, so.
Is that right?
That's right.
So were you living in Ackworth or Kennesaw? Or?
We moved in Ackworth. We had a house, the McClures had a house here, and they rented to teachers pretty much as many times as they could. So we would stay there 1 year.
Is this in Charlotte that you're talking about?
No, it was a different school. I'll have to admit I'm having a senior moment. I forget exactly what the names were, but it was right down from the school, Ackworth Elementary School.
Oh, okay.
And they rented a room, and it had a room, a kitchen, and a bathroom was what it was, attached to their house.
Okay.
And then the next year we built a house out between Ackworth and Kennesaw. And that's where we lived the next 2 or 3 years.
Okay. And I think I saw where you joined the Methodist Church here.
Well, we lived probably 100 yards from the Methodist Church from where I was born. So I was always a Methodist. When I came here, it was just automatic. We'd go to Ackworth Methodist Church, and we still go there right now.
What was that like with the old building for the Methodist Church?
Well, the old building was where Regent's Bank is now. That's where we got married, right there. It was very small, obviously, and a small building as well as numbers of members. We got to know the Fannie B and Charlotte that you mentioned, McClure's. They were going strong there, and we had a couple of Sunday school classes, and we had preaching every Sunday. And if I don't remember whether we had the night classes of preaching or Wednesday night services.
So you had a full-time pastor.
Full-time pastor, yes.
Which not everybody had.
That's right. That's right. We did not growing up. We had one that preached the second Sunday morning and the fourth Sunday night. And then during that time, we would just have Sunday school on Sunday mornings. And,
what was Ackworth like in '59?
Very rural, but to me, coming over here, it was big time because, you know, we had the lakes. I can remember the first time I crossed the little dam thinking, oh, Lee, we got a lake. And I used to fish. I don't fish anymore, but we have not enjoyed the lake like we probably should have. But it was very rural, and it has changed so much, and it just, I mean, tremendous with the Ackworth's a growing city, the best place to live in Cobb County without question in my mind. I think the government has done a fantastic job of all the things they do to keep it going and growing, but it was just a little small community. Glad to raise your kids here.
Yeah. Well, how long did you stay at North Cobb High School?
I was there 3 years.
Okay.
3 years and as assistant, and then I moved from there to Osborne High School to continue coaching football and head baseball coach. Mm-hmm. And I moved there primarily because the fellow who was at Livingston High School when I was at Livingston College, he was the head coach at Osborne, and we were somewhat friends, acquaintances anyway. Mm-hmm. And he wanted me to come down, and he took the head job, and so I was there at Osborne 5 years. Mm-hmm. And after 1 year, we moved to Smyrna and lived down there.
I was going to say, that's a long drive.
It is. I drove there for 1 year, and then we moved down there, and my wife, Gail, taught at elementary school there, and that was part of her teaching. Yeah, she stayed at North Cobb. She actually taught at North Cobb 5 years, 1 year before I came, and 3 years that I was in, and 1 year after I left.
Did she graduate before you did?
She graduated in 3 years, yeah.
I see.
She went to some summer school, but she took a full load, and that wasn't, academics wasn't my thing particularly, but like it was hers.
But you were both like 21 years old or so?
Actually, she's 1 day older than I am.
Is that right?
Her birthday's July the 13th, mine's July the 14th, so we were 21 when we got married.
But it sounds amazing that you'd be like 21, 22, and you're already teaching school.
Yeah. Well, back then, generally you graduated in 4 years, you know. Now 5 years is kind of standard.
You weren't that much older than the students.
No, that's exactly right. And majority of the students I taught were ninth graders. I taught ninth grade algebra, ninth grade general math. So yes, those kids, and I'm still friends with a lot of them now. Play golf every day with one of them that was in my class, that Pig Pruitt. And we weren't much older, but you know, we were a little older and a little more mature, I guess. I don't know, but still friends with those people.
So how long did you stay at Osborne?
I was there 5 years as a coach. And then I left from Osborne and went to Lafayette, Alabama. Now my thinking about that was, I'm from Alabama, all my old college teammates and all are coaching in Alabama. I'd like to be back over there. And that was approximately halfway between here and my home, and where all my family still were then and still are today. So I went over there. It turned out I was the only coach. It was a small school, Lafayette High School. I was the only coach because the assistant quit 2 weeks before fall football started, and we couldn't hire anybody, so I coached it all there. And I was there 2 years. And then Autry Junior High School at that time between here and Kennesaw had opened. Mr. Kermit Keenum was the principal to start with, and after him, a good friend of mine, Mr. Bill Hamilton, became principal. Well, Bill and I had been friends because he was also from Alabama, and he came over the same year I did in '59. And he called me from Lafayette and wanted me to come coach his junior high football team and teach math there. So I jumped at the opportunity to come back to Cobb County. It's a good place.
I bet Gail was ready to come back.
She was. It was a good experience over there, but different.
Now you have a bunch of children along the way too, haven't you?
We did. Mark, our son, was born here, and he moved with us to Lafayette. And then after we got back, our daughter Tricia was born, and from over here. So actually both of them born here. They're Cobb Countyans, native, and still in Cobb County. And
did your wife keep teaching?
She taught. I don't remember. I can't say exactly how many years, but yes, she taught for a while, and then when the kids got in school, she, before they got in school, she had stayed home, but after they got in school, she went back to work, and went back to work at Ackworth Elementary with Butch Price as a paraprofessional. Stayed there several years with him and thoroughly enjoyed it, and did a good job. And
So you come back to Autry Junior High. And, what was that like? Were you there the year it opened up?
No, sir. I don't remember the number of years that it had been open. It had probably been open 3 or 4 years by the time I came back. Okay. But it was a junior high. We had junior high athletics, football and basketball. girls basketball as well. And, was teaching, it was a junior high school, so we were under the auspices of the Georgia High School Association, which meant we had to do certain requirements as a ninth grader. But after I left, after my 2 years there, I was only there actually a year in October sometime. After I left, then they became a middle school, 6th, 7th, and 8th. And they didn't fit under the high school association, but they continued to play football and basketball for a while.
Oh, okay. And that was about 71?
Somewhere around there, yes.
What do you think is the value of sports for an academic program, for a school, for the kids that are in the school?
Well, obviously being an athlete at the college and high school level and coached, I think it builds discipline, it builds a lot of camaraderie, those kinds of things. I think schools that have athletics, there's a saying among some high school principals I've heard say, if we win the football game on Friday night, we have a good week at school the next week. If we don't win, it's just turmoil. There's a fight here and a fight there and whatever. Now, I know that's not 100% true, but yes, I know me as an athlete, the discipline I had to go through as an athlete helped me in academics, being disciplined and willing to know I have to do this and I've got to do it.
Tell me about Kermit Keenum.
Fantastic person. I got to know him actually after I came back from Lafayette, Alabama. I came over here, and he, during my tenure in administration, I was superintendent, assistant superintendent, and superintendent, one of the best ones that I think there could be. He was a fine Christian, or still is a fine Christian person. I always have told him, and I've told others, as a superintendent, he was in charge. Now, what I mean by that was it wasn't any hemming and hawing. Kermit said this, we did it. If you don't agree with this, he'll talk to you about it, but you're going to do it his way. And I thought that was great. He was in charge of the Board of Education, which is a total different situation than after he left and all. But yeah, he was just a good school person. He surrounded himself, and this to me was one of his strengths. He surrounded himself with people who were good at all of the other areas. Instruction, for an example, he had good instructional people, good business people, but he was in charge, and he's a good friend of mine till this day.
I think he came from rural Mississippi.
Rural Mississippi,
so
he sure did.
Fairly similar background.
Yes, sir, sure did.
Tell me about Bill Hamilton.
Bill and I did not know Bill. I knew of Bill because he was a high school football coach that our high school played. And I just knew him as the Coach Bill, Coach Hamilton. He and I came over here at the same time in '59, and he taught at Ackworth Elementary, which was 1 through 8, I believe, at that time. And then we became better personal friends during that time, even though we weren't working together. But after that, and then he was named principal at Ultra Junior High School, so that's one of the reasons he called me and knew me. And then when the principal at where I was at Lafayette came one afternoon, school was out, and he always called me boy. He looked at me and said, "Boy, Mr. Hamilton from Ackworth, Georgia, just was trying to find you." I said, "Yes, sir, I know who he is and I know what he wants. Thank you." And I went home and called Bill and there. But Bill has been good friends. I still is till this day. Saw him Sunday at church, and he's a good fellow.
Well, I think you said something about it, that he helped you get into administration.
He did. When I came that first year and was teaching math and coaching the junior high football team, and the second year, about the end of the football season, he came to me and says, East Cobb Middle School East Cobb Junior High, has a assistant principal vacancy. And Dr. Cruz, who was the superintendent at that time, wants to talk to you about it. Now, the reason Dr. Cruz wanted to talk to him about it, because Bill had called him and told him that I was ready to go in administration, wanted to, and he recommended me, and so that's how he got me into administration. he talked me into getting out of coaching and getting into administration.
What did you think of Alton Cruz?
Oh, he was top of the line. He's an Alabama fella too,
Okay.
but he was top of the line. Dr. Cruz was great. As I say, he's the one that actually hired me, and he was a good academic person and very well read.
So, did you go straight to being principal at East Cobb?
I went from Altra to there as assistant principal for about 6 or 8 months, from October the rest of the year. What had happened, we'd had a death of an elementary principal suddenly, and the assistant principal at East Cobb Junior High went to take that principalship and left an assistant principal vacancy. And without going into a whole lot of detail, at the end of that year, the East Cobb principal, whose name was Mr. Benny Davis, took the job as athletic director of Cobb County Schools, which was the first athletic director. So that left a principal vacancy. Well, I'd only been in it about 6 months as administrator, and we had a lot of kids, that kind of thing. But some of the older teachers on the staff went to Dr. Cruz and said, Henry Nettles needs to be our principal. Well, he's only been, just, it doesn't matter. He needs to be our principal. So they all took credit for me being named principal at East Cobb. And I've thanked them sometimes, and I've fussed at them sometimes.
So I guess you're in your 30s by this time?
Yes.
Early 30s?
Yeah. I was there 1 year as assistant principal and 11 years as principal at East Cobb. And then from there I went to Pine Mountain Middle School. At that time we had converted them to all of us were middle schools, and went to Pine Mountain. I stayed there as 12 years as principal at Pine Mountain.
And I remember at that time, East Cobb was a fairly new school, right across the street from Wheeler.
That's correct.
And that was a growing suburban area at that time.
It grew to the point that Wheeler went on double session just about the time that I went to East Cobb.
Is that right?
East Cobb did not go on double sessions, but we had kids everywhere. In fact, I remember one year during the 6 periods of the day, we had one classroom that was not used, which means that teachers would float. We call it floating. They'd go back and forth. We had one time 8 physical education classes in the gym at one time. Now that's almost an impossibility, but we survived it. And
because the area was growing so fast.
Growing so fast. Now when I first went to East Cobb, if I remember correctly, our attendance area was from 41 Canton Road to the east and 41 to the south, and that whole quadrant of Cobb County attended East Cobb and Wheeler.
It's a large area.
It sure is, and of course there are a lot of schools in there now, but at that time, that's why it was growing. We were bordered the city of Marietta on the east side of 41. There was no 75 at that time, but there were a lot of kids, Wow. By
the way, you would have been here when Cobb County was going through desegregation. Can you talk about that a little bit?
The first, when I was teaching, coaching at Osborne High School at that time, when we had one African-American girl who they had told us was coming to Osborne. None of us knew what grade she was in or whatever, but she was the first that was in a school where I was. Now, I don't know about some of the others, but it's worked out just like it has, I guess, all over the country, Cobb County. It turned out that it was going to be a big deal. Turned out it wasn't that big a deal in some ways, and that kind of thing.
This would have been about 65, I imagine.
I would think so, 64 or 5, yes, somewhere.
Yeah.
And
so just one the first year?
Sir, just one at Osborne High School first year. I really don't know about how many in the others, and I'm assuming that all the others had some African Americans that same year, but I don't know that for a fact. Yeah.
And then eventually, was I guess 65 was the last year that African Americans in the county could go to Lemon Street High School. And in the last year, 66, 67, they couldn't. So the schools were totally integrated to the degree that there were African Americans in the school zone.
Yes, yes. I don't know the numbers and all that kind of thing.
But there weren't a whole lot of African Americans in that part of the county at that time.
That's right, yeah. And but
So no protests or anything?
I don't remember any,
Okay.
not that I can think of right offhand. But
I did an interview once with the first African American student at Lindley Middle School, and J.B. Stoner and Lester Madich were out protesting in the parking lot the first day she went to school. You didn't have anything like that?
I don't remember it if we did. I think I would remember.
Was Mr. Osborne still around?
He was still around, but he had retired. He was the principal at Osborne High School, which is now, or was at that time, the Osborne Junior High School when I went there. And they had just built Osborne High School. I went there the first year that they opened it. In fact, I remember we were 9 days late, which means we had to go to 9 Saturdays to catch up. But Mr. Osborne was still around, and I knew him, didn't know him very well, but I knew him.
Any impressions about him?
Well, he's old school, you know, and as I say, I only knew him basically after he had retired, just because he was associated with Robert L. Osborne High School.
Right.
Now, his wife was involved as a secretary, if I remember. I'm not positive about that, but yeah, you know, Mr. Osborne was a good fella. Probably was a real good principal, the old school.
What did he look like? Tall or
No, as I remember him, he wasn't very tall. He's kind of husky. Maybe that's putting it nice, I guess.
Okay.
Kind of husky, I get. He wasn't a fat or anything like that, but white-headed. You know, I remember him not having a lot of hair. But
well, he's retired.
he's retired, and that's been a long time. So I may have
And
characterized,
you were very young at that time.
and I may have characterized him completely different. But whatever.
Well, how did the transition to Pine Mountain Middle School come about?
Fantastic. When I was called by a person in central office, they asked me, the director of personnel, Jerry Ingram, who is also was a good friend of mine. Jerry passed a couple of years ago. And anyway, Jerry called me and asked me would I want to consider going to Pine Mountain. And I said, well, Jerry, you know, not really. I'm satisfied right here at East Cobb Middle School, you know, whatever. And well, think about it. And a couple of days later, he called me and, have you thought about it? I said, yeah, nothing changed. And one of our former teachers at East Cobb named Brad Sanderson, who at that time had moved up to the central office as an assistant to one of the assistant superintendents. And I called Brad. He was also one of our assistant principals at East Cobb before we left. And I said, Brad, Jerry wants me to go to Pine Mountain. What do you think about it? He said, you're a fool if you don't want to go to Pine Mountain.
Really?
Now, he said, it's a nice school, a great community, those kinds of things. So I called Jerry and told him, well, Jerry, I talked about it with Gail and that kind of thing, and decided, well, yeah, maybe now's a good time to go to Pine Mountain. Well, from my standpoint, professionally, it was fantastic.
Okay.
Great school. It was a school built for middle school, which, for example, East Cobb was built to be East Cobb High School, and they grew so they had to convert it to a junior high and build Wheeler High School. So it was built for high school, meaning like all the science labs were in one section of the building, the math, you know, that kind of thing, as opposed to a middle school. Pine Mountain was built in what we call cluster form, so that you had a cluster of teachers here, the four, math, science, social studies, and English, and then another corner of the building you had another cluster, and they were in what we call teams. And that was much better from a middle school standpoint.
So this is the open classroom?
Well, you would have four classrooms, and between two of them would be a partition. So you could open it into two large areas, but it was not just one big room with 4 teachers and classes. Okay. So in that open concept, it was not that. But another big advantage of ours, and this does not mean anything toward the East Cobb staff or any of the junior high staffs, but those people had to meet high school qualifications and standards, whereas at middle school, we had middle school. So you were dealing with teachers who wanted to be in middle school. And that doesn't mean that the high school teacher didn't, but it was just, you had different training. And I give Kennesaw State credit when they got into the teaching of the middle school program, fantastic middle school teachers came from Kennesaw State. Dr. Siegel and her group, and I tell you, we didn't, if personnel told me, we've got to teach from Kennesaw State that she wants to interview with you, I knew she or he were going to be middle school oriented. That was not an issue. It was just a matter of whether they would fit into us, if they knew the academics and qualified to teach the subject they were going to teach. So it worked out just fine. So the transition for me was great. And
now, what years were you at Pine Mountain?
I think I went there in about 83 or 84, I think, and I retired in 95. Okay. I believe that's the years.
Okay, so that'd be 12 years.
12 years. I was at 12 years. Enjoyed every day of it.
Of course, that area was really booming.
Yes. It's kind of not booming as much right now. You know, we had, I don't remember how many trailers, portable classrooms we had at one time while I was there, but it was like 8 or 10 or some such number. And to my knowledge, they don't have any now. That the attendance has decreased a little bit in the last few years. And
but that was a better situation than East Cobb because of the fact that it was built for middle school.
That's right, and it was close to home. There were a lot of advantages to me, and that's because I enjoyed my time at East Cobb. We were going through drug era. That's when the drugs were beginning to hit the schools, and we had to deal with a lot of that kind of thing. We dealt with it at Pine Mountain as well, but it kind of waned a little bit by then. So, but I can remember one year at East Cobb, one time we had 3 drug cases. I had 2 assistants. We had a drug situation not related in each of the offices at one time. But, you know, it worked out. We were able to deal with it, and society has dealt with it to some degree and whatever. But,
well, the Pine Mountain Schools, I think it's a beautiful school and beautiful area.
It is. Great staff from principals usually talk about things like if you have a good custodian and a good dietitian, those are 2 components of school you need to do well in. And we had from them custodians, teachers, paraprofessionals, office staff was great.
I was trying to remember when Russ Clayton taught there, but it's probably after you.
And quick story about Russ. He was a student at East Cobb when I was principal.
Is that right?
It was. And
then he went to Kennesaw.
He did. Excuse me. Russ came into my office one day and said, Mr. Nettles, I want to be a teacher like you, and I want you to tell me how I need to do it. Well, obviously, I took him through, you got to go to college and this and that and whatever. And when I went to Pine Mountain, he was a teacher with us at Pine Mountain. And when I decided I was going to retire, and I knew I was going to retire at the beginning of the school year, told the staff and everybody. Well, Russ decided he wanted to go to high school, which was okay, so he transferred to McKeachin High School. I'm still friends with Russ to this day, and our Pine Mountain retired teachers have a luncheon once a month, and Russ comes to all of me, and I sit next to each other. And,
oh, great.
Yeah, Russ was a good fellow.
You probably his Menaboni list then.
Yes. I've got the stuff that Russ sends out. He always mails me a copy of that thing. Yeah.
I get it too.
Yeah.
Okay. You had on your you made a mention in your little bio about Dr. Jim Lowry. Talk about him a little bit.
Jim, when we were in the Methodist Church, we've had other ministers, and Jim, when he came to be with us, we had been having a hard time, and Jim was sent to us, and he hit the ground running, and he caused us to hit the ground running too, with visitations and those kinds of things. But he was a good preacher. He was a good friend. He got us going. He's still a friend to this day. He served as our district superintendent, and I still see Jim occasionally, and his wife, Diane. She might have been more important than Jim at that time. I don't know. We thought the world of Diane too. But yeah, Jim, he spoke when I retired. I'd ask him to speak a little bit, and probably at my funeral, Gail will probably ask Jim to say something there too, so I don't know.
were you involved in well, you obviously were involved in the church. What kind of positions did you have in the
Well,
church?
we at one time or other, I think I served as on every committee and chairman of all of them, with a couple of exceptions. But the administrative board, the finance, the trustees, those kind of things that you know are biggies in the Methodist Church, and I've served on them and as chairman of all of them at one time or another. And Jim had a lot to do with that. Things ran much smoother when I was chairman of some of those while Jim was there. So, yeah.
Okay. Talk about students and how they've changed over the years.
I think they've changed it like society has.
Okay.
Students, I use my two granddaughters. One of them goes to Kennesaw State. She's 18. The other one is a freshman at North Cobb. She's 15. And I talk to them about this is the way it was. The cell phones, you know, technology has just changed everything. In fact, the subject matter they're teaching, it is far beyond what we taught. You know, the math that I taught, when a ninth grader taking Algebra 1, well, I was seventh grade, granddaughters took that in the seventh grade, and that kind of thing. And they were taking in middle schools and in freshmen and sophomores, the math classes we were taking as in college, really, whatever. But the students have changed. They're more societal problems, broken homes. They're more of these kinds of things now that we have to deal with, teachers have to deal with, and whatever. But you had to love kids. I love the middle school kids. That doesn't mean I didn't like elementary or high school kids, but I love middle schools. They were a different breed of kids. We used to say the sixth graders were scared. They were running because they didn't know where they were going. Seventh graders were trying to be cool but couldn't. And the eighth graders were cool and just sashayed up and down the hall, no rush. I'm in charge, you know, whatever. But the students, they've really changed. But they're a lot sharper today too. They know a lot of stuff. They know a lot of stuff. They sure do.
Well, I've always thought that if you could teach middle school, you can teach anything.
That's exactly right. Exactly right. You had to want to teach them. And as we've said in the middle school, you're teaching kids. You're not teaching math or science or whatever. You're teaching a kid, a student. And and I taught in high school, so it's fair for me to say this. If in high school you're teaching a subject, you know, kids are there to learn that subject. But they're good high school teachers, you know, great high school teachers. I'm friends with a lot of them.
Talk about teachers a little bit. To me, college teachers have got it easy compared to public school teachers. I used to be invited out to speak at different schools, and maybe I'd teach, you know, 2 periods, and I would be exhausted, and I'd be very happy I could leave, and those teachers were teaching, you know, classes, 5 or 6 classes a day.
There is a big difference in the college teaching, and I see it now with my granddaughter, who is actually in her 3rd year. She was in the program, the dual enrollment program at North Cobb, so she actually went to Kennesaw her entire senior year at North Cobb. So she's almost a junior, maybe a junior now. But I talked to her about her classes, and you know, they'll have like 200 in a class, and it's no way to be personal with 200 in a class. Whereas in the middle schools, we usually had anywhere from 30 to 35. I think 36 was the max you could have.
That's still a lot.
That is a lot, and you have to teach them. You have to deal with all the problems they have, and I know college professors do deal with those problems, but I know that they are more likely teaching their subject matter, and I'm going to teach it. You learn how to study, you learn how to get it, you learn how to deal with the test, etc. But there are exceptions, and I've seen exceptions at Kennesaw State with my granddaughter. There's been a time or two where she would talk to them about something, and they were very open to hear it, listen to her, and work with her toward the problem. But yeah, it's different. And
Do you think teachers get as much respect now as they did back in '59?
absolutely not. Absolutely. And the old saying is, you know, if you got in trouble at school, at my age, when we went through, you were in trouble at home. That's not always the case right now. It is in a lot of cases. But the teacher's not right in today's society in all cases. And to me, that's bad. Now, that doesn't mean the teacher is always right. You know, the policeman is not always right. But you need to respect the authority. And I don't think it's respected. Now, I can think of one situation, I won't even mention school, where a boy had messed up the restroom at school, and we told him, we expect you to stay out of school and clean it. His comment to me was, I don't clean bathrooms at home, I'm not cleaning at school. Now, that may still be in existence today, I don't know. But there's a problem, I think, and I don't know who to blame. Society, I'm not blaming parents particularly, but there is a difference now in respect. And I think it's not only with teachers, policemen, authorities in any role. You know, to me, if I go somewhere and they tell me to do this or that, I'm gonna do this or that. We'll talk about why, but if they're the authority, but that's not the case now. Too many whys.
Well, I remember when I was coming along, if a coach told you to do something, you did it and didn't ask why. But after a few years, it seemed like they wanted to have an explanation.
That's exactly right. And there's nothing wrong with giving an explanation. It's just, you know, the old saying is, why? Because I said so, you know. But we grew up under that way and whatever.
Did you have a turnover problem with the teachers in your schools? Or
I don't remember it in the schools at East Cobb and Pine Mountain. You know, you had the obvious, some were retired, some got married and had to move with their husband and, you know, different things like that. But for the most part, no, they were, if anything, we hardly ever had vacancies. We had people who, the system is that about this time of the year, the schools will know what their vacancies are. Well, I'll need a 6th grade math teacher, or 7th grade science, or whatever. And then the county would send out a transfer list. And as soon as the teachers from other schools find out it, a lot of them would want to come to Pine Mountain. That was my latest time. You know, some of them, if you don't have a vacancy, you can't hire them, but that kind of thing. So there are turnover issues in some places, but I was not involved in that.
Well, talk about Ackworth a little bit. How has Ackworth changed?
Oh gosh, from time that I first got here in '59, small, had one street. I don't think we had a traffic light, if I remember correctly. But it has changed. It still is it's a small city, but I still think of it as a community. It definitely was a community when I came here. As I said earlier this morning, we are the government part of Ackworth has opened it up. You know, it's growing like a weed. It's just great. There's a lot of opportunities to do here. You can find something to do in Ackworth, if not in Ackworth, just nearby. It's a good place to live, to raise your kids. All the schools, the elementaries, the primaries, the middle schools, the high school, even though people that live in Ackworth don't necessarily all go to North Cobb. It's an attendance alignment issue. Some of them, there are some kids who live almost in walking distance of North Cobb, but they have to go to Alatoona High School because of the boundaries. But they're good schools, great schools. I'm a big supporter of North Cobb because I was there. My kids went there. I support all they do. I go to all the athletic events and concerts, etc., and know the people out there. But I know the middle school and the elementary people too, so it's good.
Well, I'm just about out of questions. Anything you'd like to add to the interview?
Well, in regards to the interview, I think I've watched all of the others. It's been an enjoyable time to look at them. I learned some stuff from people that I might not have known about Ackworth. I think it's a good thing. I really don't know who's responsible for it all being done. and how you got involved and all that, but keep it up, you know.
I think I got volunteered.
Volunteer. I don't know how. And when Mac called me and asked me would I willing to do it, I said, Mac, you know, I'd be glad. I'm not a native Acworthian, but I've been here a long time, and I know through all my coaching and teaching, you have kids then who are now adults. You've talked to their kids and whatever, and you're still friends with them. You see them on a social basis and that kind of thing. So this is good. This will be, I'll send this over to my family in Southwest Alabama and let them see it. They all have been to Acworth. They've been to different things over here and spent time with us, so they know about it. Know some people here, believe it or not. But it's been a good thing, so keep it up.
All right. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for your volunteering time. Thank you.